You guys ready for me to go live? It's Saturday night. No. My kids might not know that. I know you guys will. Alrighty. Okay, let's hit live. And then we'll see how many people show up. We know your mamas. And then anytime anybody has any sort of questions, what we'll do is I will let them like they'll do like a question and answer up on the side. I think you guys can see it down at the bottom. It'll say Q&A. Can you see that at the bottom of your screens? Yep. So if anybody asks any sort of questions kind of thing, then we can see it there and they can ask away. Okay, so let me do that. Okay. Yeah, so we will keep all the questions anonymous. So then that way, if anybody does have any questions, they don't want to feel awkward in asking either kind of thing. So if anybody asks a question, I'll read it out. So that way we can all answer it together and then we can go from there. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Sound good? Amazing. Okay. Okay, guys, thanks for joining me Thursday night. I think it's my favorite one so far. I think I've said that about 5 times already, but that's okay. Yeah, nothing like having the kids here. Like that. You'll always be my kids no matter what age. Sorry, Riley. Kind of thing. So, you know, I know you're almost 22, but still. So I brought you guys all together because we know the biggest thing out there right now is you guys say it yourself, parents say it, is that nobody's teaching you guys about money and especially what to do with it. Now, money sounds like a blanket statement, but that comes down to even budgeting. It comes down to bank accounts and it comes down to credit cards. And how does it impact you guys going forward? Not just today, but what you do today will actually have an impact for you down the road. So I just thought, you know what, let's get you all together. You guys are the perfect age range. Like we have Kylie, you know, grade 9, no job yet. So we don't even like have a savings plan or anything started yet for her, right? Because we're not there. She doesn't have anything to save. And then right through to Riley, who like you're almost done university, you're out on the career, and it's like, where's that path take? And then we got you, Maya Nolan, right in the middle. It's like just finishing high school and going into university and moving away. So these are all things that you don't have these conversations when at the dinner table. It's just not something that we actually talk about. So I thought, let's all get together and we can all, you know, chat and educate everybody and find out something for ourselves too. Because we don't know what we don't know, right?
Ain't that the truth?
Absolutely. And then as parents and even myself, I don't know what you guys don't know, which sounds interesting. But it's that bit of that domino effect. So I thought, okay, let's just kind of dive in. And actually, I said who you guys were, but I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself. So how about Riley? We're going to start with you. Give us a little background on you.
Riley. I go to Mac. I will be finishing in December. I am 21, almost 22. Almost forgot my age. And I would say I have like an average knowledge for my age as far as money goes.
Awesome. That's awesome. Okay, Nolan. We'll let you introduce yourself.
Thought I got kicked out for a second there.
Oh, I was going to say, it just said your internet connection's unstable. It did seem that. Oh, that was weird. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, cut over.
Yeah, I can now.
Okay.
I thought maybe
this is weird.
That's why I was kind of stopped talking.
Okay. Oh, I wonder if it's because there's 5 of us on, which is interesting because I haven't, mind you, I had that happen last week when I was talking with Jennifer, but before then I haven't had any intermittent cutting out. Okay, so I think we might see a little bit of delays in our conversation, right? It's going to be a little bit more pausing, so we can let people finish their statements. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Riley, we got a good basics of knowledge of finances based on age and based on next step in career. Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, Nolan, how about yourself?
I'm just recently turned 19. I also go to McMaster, and I'm going to be moving into student housing and moving out for the first time next year. And I don't really spend my money, so I've been lucky with that, but I also don't know a whole lot about what to do with it.
Right. Yeah. And that's totally understandable too. So let's figure out how we're going to keep it so that you're okay to spend it, because we have to spend it, but that way you're not blowing it and losing it and worrying about it either, right? So we're going to get a nice balance for you too. So that's awesome. Okay, Maya.
Yeah.
I'm Maya. I'm almost 18. I'm going into my first year at Laurier next year, and I have sort of an idea on how to save my money, but I'm not good at keeping money in my checkings account. I can save money, but that's
Okay. Well, okay. So then we got to figure that out too. Saving is good. So that's awesome. Okay, Kylie, how about you?
saving is good, but budgeting is.
We have an interesting connection. I didn't hear what you
I'm
said.
Kylie. I'm 15. I'm grade 9. Who?
Can you guys hear everybody,
Good.
or is it just me?
Okay. Well, I'm 15, grade 9.
Okay, and no job, so no
It,
experience with money
It's
yet.
cut in
It's
and out
cutting
a
out.
few times, but
Okay, this could be an interesting conversation, guys. Okay, so let's do our best. So at least we can hear each other, right? So it's just I think we're kind of cutting out a little bit. Okay, so we've got a vast array of knowledge here. So let's start with the basics. So in terms of what do we know about let's dive into credit, because I know that was part of our conversation earlier today. And what do you know about credit? Kind of, do you know the difference between what a credit card is compared to a debit card? Let's start with you, Nolan.
Yeah, well, a credit card will gain interest. So I'm actually just learning about that because I just got my first credit card. So
Oh,
I
you
haven't
did
even
get it.
used
Good.
yet.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Yeah. I haven't used it yet.
Okay, and it does, and it's when you having a debit card is attached to your bank account, right? So, and in your bank account is where that's your earned money. So money that you've got from your job, you're putting it in your account. So let's just say it's in your checking account. So anytime you want to use that money that you've earned, it's in there for you to use. But in terms of a credit card, that's money that you're borrowing from the bank, right? And so let's say they give you your first credit card, it's a limit of say $500, which I think could be, is that common? Is that what you got as your first student credit card, Nolan? Was there a limit of 500?
I think it's.
Or do you know?
I think it's more than that, but I haven't checked into it because I haven't gone to use it yet, so I didn't.
Okay.
Use it yet.
Okay. So let's say it's $500. So what that means to you guys is that the bank is saying, okay, so we're going to give you this credit that if you need to borrow it, so say you need to go get something done on the car, you can actually, and you didn't have the cash in hand, you could actually borrow this money. And then you can get the work done on the car. And then by time the bill comes in, which is generally every 30 days, you have to pay it off in full. But if you don't have that money to pay it off, because say it did cost you 500, then you can at least make the minimum payment, which is 3% of the balance. So then you would make a $15 a month payment. And then what's going to happen is on your next statement, they're going to charge you interest. And most credit cards will charge an interest rate of about 19%. So on $500, I brought my calculator because not that quick today. Can't do that one off the top of my head. So 19% on 500, that carries an annual interest cost of about $95. So what that means for you is about $8 of that is going to be interest. So out of your minimum payment that you would make of say $15 on the 500, they're going to charge you $8. So more than half of that is actually gone towards interest. And now what happens is on your next statement, that other $7 of interest that's being charged is actually being added to your balance. And now you're paying interest on that money again. So it's compounding. So it adds up. It continues to add until you pay it off. So if you're always making a minimum payment, this is how credit card companies make their money. So what we do know, and I've been in finance for 21 years, is that we're going to see that the students that have say got their credit card and they've ran it up to the limit, say $500, $1,000, $2,000 in whatever credit card limit that they have, and then one day they just be like, I don't feel like paying it, and then they don't pay it and they just walk away from that. What's going to happen for you in the future is that's going to affect your credit now, because what we're doing is that very first credit card you're getting is starting to establish the credit history that you are now going to get, which will take you further in life, which is kind of like we were talking about this earlier. It's kind of like your car insurance, right? So when you first get your beginners, you get set up for car insurance. So at least that way you're starting a history. So then as you go to get insurance later, then you've already established a history of driving. So hopefully your insurance isn't going to be as expensive. It's going to be the same thing with credit. So yeah, what's that saying? What comes first, the chicken or the egg? So it's, and it's hard. So you need credit to get credit. So the best time to get it is when you're a student, because they give it out to everybody, but it's all on how you use it. And so that was the big question. Actually, Maya and I were talking a little bit about that today, weren't we? In terms of a credit card. So what was your thoughts behind the use of a credit card?
I think my biggest concern was that I knew that in my debit card, I get my paycheck and it gets deposited into my checking account, and I didn't understand where the money from a credit card came from. I thought you had to put money into your credit card to be able to spend it, but so I wasn't entirely sure how that worked.
Right. And so that's what we were saying, because you were saying my money's in my debit card, and it's actually not in the debit card, it's actually in the bank account. It's just that your bank account is attached to the debit card, and that's how you use it, right? So as the money's there. And then what happens, and then we were talking about, because she's like, if I've got the money, why would I use a credit card? And it's because it doesn't make sense. But what I was saying is that even if you use it to get gas, because the three of you have cars, so that's one of the easier ways to actually establish credit, is that use the, when you're filling up the gas, use your credit card then, kind of thing. So that way you're starting to use it as a cycle, but then you pay it off, which you can do through online banking or telephone banking. So then that way you're not carrying a balance and you're not worrying about any interest that you're paying, because you've got it, but it's this way it's just starting the credit cycle to begin. So does that make sense in terms of why we would use a credit card or how we would use a credit card? What was your first experience, Riley, when you got yours?
I generally made it practice to use it for nearly everything.
Okay.
And due to the luxury of online banking and mobile banking, instead of waiting until end of month to pay it, often I'll pay it at the end of the week or end of every 2 weeks, let's say, just to avoid any possible forgotten charges. But at this point, I generally use it for almost everything. I don't really use my debit card much at all, but I never spend over the money that I have in my account to pay off.
That is,
and I try to remain very conscious of that, because I know that if you don't remain conscious of that, you can slip into a pretty nasty hill that you're going to have a hard time climbing back up.
Right. Absolutely. And especially based on work, right? If you're not getting enough hours at work, or now you're back to school, so work's limited as well. And unfortunately, now that the scenario we're in as well, with limited work for the summer, right? So that's where we're thinking most students are actually making more money. Now we're going to find not so much, unfortunately. So already having that nest egg behind you and not having debt load in front of you is going to make it a little bit easier going forward.
Agreed.
That's awesome. Now, do you without obviously names or anything, do you know of any friends that have come across that scenario where they've actually got a little bit buried potentially, or they've maybe overspent on a credit card, and you guys talk about it, or it's damn, I got no money because I got to pay my credit card?
I've had a few friends have minor slip ups, I guess you would call them, where they kind of spend a little more than they should have, and it hurt them a little bit, but thankfully nobody with a major slip up.
Which is awesome, right? Which is awesome. So, because when I was at the bank years ago, I would see, the kid coming in to get a car loan, and that credit card slip up, if you didn't get in front of it, actually impacts what you can borrow for a car loan and such, right? So, and that's the biggest thing that I feel like I always want to talk about in terms of credit for you guys, is that you need it, because you need, in order to get anything in a car loan, a mortgage, any sort of lending, you always need to have a credit history. So that's why it's good to start young, but it's all about how you manage it, so it doesn't come back and bite you in a couple of years down the road when, the young foolish years are behind you. And now it's okay, now I want to get the car because I'm done school and this, and now all of a sudden you can't. And so now you have to ask mom and dad to maybe co-sign. And some parents might not be in a position to co-sign to get that car loan either, right?
That kind of brings up a thought. I know there's a I guess you could say, a rumor or hearsay that checking your credit score will actually hurt your credit score. But then there's some websites that say they won't impact your credit score by checking that. Is there truth to that?
Yes and no. So how it impacts, so you can do what we call a soft inquiry. So you can actually do, have you heard of Credit Karma? Have any of you heard of
Yes.
that one? Is that the one you might be referring to? Like, I know some of the banks now give you access to check your credit score. So let's say for instance, Scotiabank, like you can actually go onto their online banking and it says check your credit, and now they are attached to TransUnion, and it'll tell you based on this 30-day cycle what your credit score means, kind of thing, and how that impacts you. So when you check it, it doesn't have an impact on you, but it's when you go to the different companies, that's where the impact happens. So say you went to RBC because you were looking to buy, let's say you're looking to buy a car. Let's use that as an example. And you go to RBC to find out what type of interest rates they have. And then you go to TD to find out, and they do a credit check to run an application. And then you go to CIBC, and then you go to, Bank of Montreal. So now what it looks like is you're credit seeking because they actually don't know what you're looking for. And it's a lot of inquiries in a short amount of time. And that is what can have an impact on your credit score. So a lot of clients will ask me that. It's like, don't do a credit check because I don't want it to impact my credit score. Whereas it's all based on the algorithms. Like, I'm a mortgage brokerage that's actually doing one credit inquiry, and I can send it out to a variety of lenders. So it has minimal impact on a credit score.
Okay.
So, right. So, and so it's interesting you're asking about credit score, because Maya and I were talking earlier, and she's like, what is a credit bureau? And what is that? And I was like, right, because we talk about credit score, we hear about it, but we don't actually know what that means. So what it is, it's the report that actually carries and it holds the history of your credit. So which starts today, which starts like when you are getting your first credit card. And so what happens is, based on having the credits, by establishing it now and then having it for long term, you're actually building up a history. So the longer you have an account, the better your credit score is going to be, because you're of the longevity. But it's also based on the type of credit that you have. So let's say you have 2 or 3 different credit cards. One limits 5,000, one's 10, one's 20, and it's all about the balance that you carry on it. So if you're carrying a balance that's around half of the limit, so say on the credit card with 10,000, because maybe they've got an interest rate promo at 0.99 and it makes sense, so you're going to borrow the money off of that card. So if you carry a balance at around the 5,000 compared to the $10,000 limit, you're revolving the credit properly. So you're actually only carrying a balance of about half of the limit, and that actually improves your credit score. But it's when you have the multiple credit cards and they're actually all carried at the limit that now drops your credit score, in terms of, because now you're not revolving the credit properly and everything's now being highly utilized. So that will decrease the credit score. But what do you like? But why people would be like, well, who cares what the credit score is? But the credit score is actually what determines who lends you money and who doesn't, and at what interest rates. So credit scores on a credit bureau or range anywhere from in the 300s up to the 900s. And to get a mortgage, your credit score has to be like in what we call the regular lending, so the good interest rates, you would have to have a credit score of above 600. 680 is preferred. 600 is our cutoff when you have less than 20% down, which is a CMHC insured mortgage. That's a little bit too much. We won't get into that right now. But by having the good credit score, so if your credit score is below 600, you're going to have a hard time even getting a car loan, and you potentially have another hard time even getting a credit card, kind of, because now there's a reason why your credit score is low. So whether that would be, say you missed that credit card payment. So if you carry a balance and say the minimum payment on it is $15, because at a card limit or a card balance of 500, you have to pay 3% of the outstanding balance. So based on that, it's a $15 a month payment, and you're like, I'll just pay it next month. Like, not a big deal, it's $15. But that actually now shows as a missed payment on your credit card statement, which then gets updated on your credit bureau, and that's now a ding against you, which will lower your credit score. So it actually has an impact. So it's one of those things that I always say, even if it's only 10 or $15, just pay it. And that's the beauty of, like you're saying, mobile banking. You can do it right from your phone. And what I'll even say to some people is that even set it up as a reoccurring payment against your credit card, like on your online banking, because you can actually set them up to do regular monthly payments. Like I do that with, say, my hot water tank, because I got to pay the rental on that every month, but I always forget that bill. So what I do is I know it's going to be, say, $29.85 or whatever it is every month. So I actually just on the 20th of every month automatically, I just set it up so it's a reoccurring payment. So it'll never be late and I don't have to think about it because it's like a pre-authorized. And that's actually a good idea to kind of get into. So it's creating the habits of the consistency. So that way there's no missed payments and you never have to worry. And that's if you're carrying a balance. Does that make sense?
I have a question about the
Yeah.
credit score.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does make sense.
Okay, good.
So I heard that if you aren't carrying a balance, if you buy something and you pay it off minutes later on your mobile banking, that it won't improve your credit score because you never really carried a balance. Is that?
Yes and no. Yeah.
Every 2 weeks.
So like, right. But what'll happen is based on, because if he's doing it, say every 2 weeks, what'll actually happen is some of that balance, depending on when the credit card company reports like to the credit bureau, it might actually reflect a balance on it. So even though he's paying it off in full all the time, because what it is you want the on the credit report is you actually want it, they want to see that there was a balance, that it was utilized, even if it was $35 because it was a tank of gas against it, like a $500 or $1,000 limit. At least they were showing some sort of activity, as opposed to using it today, paying it tonight, and it never actually hits. So it'll never actually generate any sort of usage, which in turn builds up your credit score and credit history. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's even like, so say even if you went to, say you get gas every Sunday. So it's almost like, you know, use the credit card on a Sunday and then maybe pay it off on the Friday. So it's just that way. So then that way, you know, you're paying it off because you've got the money and it was something you're going to do anyway. But at least that one would hit the credit bureau, and that's what's actually going to keep generating the usage. Otherwise, it'll just show that it was never used. It was never utilized. So you actually want to show something. Okay. Awesome. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kylie, are you following?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. So you'll be in great shape when you go get your first job and your credit card. So this was awesome. Okay, Mabel, and just if it's over your head or you don't understand though, you have to let me know, okay?
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So what do we know about budgeting? Maya, how about you talk about budgeting? What do you know about budgeting? What does it mean to you?
I think budgeting is like putting aside certain amounts of money for each things. Like it could be necessities or wants or whatever. Like for me, like I would put aside a certain amount for like, say, iced coffee, like each month, or gas, or my data bill, or something like that. Like I think that's what budgeting is, sort of.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. So it's almost like in then taking, like you do it based just on your paycheck as well, right? Like, so like what was the, because technically, because you put it into savings, which is like a budget as well. So like, and I think you've done that since you started working.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So every paycheck I get, I put half of my paycheck into my savings, and then the rest of it I keep and I spend whatever I spend when I want.
Right. Yeah. So at least that way you've still got the savings kind of thing, but then you can still do the wants, but you're also covering the gas and the iced coffees. So and then if you want the nails done or you want the lashes or anything like that, you just build it into the budget, right? Right. But how did that impact you when, like your previous job, you weren't getting a lot of hours?
It was less money going into my savings account, but then it was also less money for me to spend when I wanted to. So I had to be really cautious about where I was spending my money and how often. But now that I have a job with more hours, like I'm still cautious about it, but not as cautious as I was before when I was getting less hours.
But you were still putting money into your savings.
Yes.
Okay, and that's key, right? So it's like when you have, so as we go through these fluctuations, and you're gonna, especially with work, well, and especially right now, and then seasonal, because you, like through school, you guys have seasonal jobs, right? No, Riley and Nolan, like with the sports, right? So then,
Yeah.
so you'll, yeah, so then you would get like more hours in this, obviously in the winter, and then not so much in the summer. So then that way it's all about how do you make that last?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
Generally speaking, there's often a period of a month or month and a half where uh, all my winter income from refereeing is no longer coming in, and then I haven't started my full-time work for the summer.
Right.
So times like that, I think budgeting is important, but I definitely am not the best budgeter. The way I generally save is if I know school is going to be, say, $12,000 for next year,
Yeah.
the second I hit 12,001, I start saving for something else, even if it's not exactly an important thing.
That's awesome.
But I don't divide paychecks by a percentage or anything. Generally, I do it just um, kind of like eyeballing it. So if I think that this account needs more to make it to the level that I need for whatever I'm buying by a certain
Yeah.
time, then I'll just put a higher percentage, even 100% in
Amazing.
sometimes, or sometimes it's none, depending on where it's at.
Yeah, but that's awesome. But at the end of the day, though, so that process works for you because when you get to, like, say, like you're saying for school tuitions due, for talking sake, you've got it, and because you know you have to get it by a certain time, so you've actually got that. But you just do it in a different way.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's what works for you. But I think that's awesome though because it's still a discipline, right? So, and that's one of the biggest things I find as well is that what works for you might not work for you or you or you. You know, it's but at the end of the day, you have to figure out what works best. I remember having a conversation with a lady as well, and she said it's great for some people who like. Do you ever remember that show, Gail Voss-Ostley, "Till Death Do Us Part" or anything? Did you ever hear that? That one, she
Yeah.
was a little bit abrupt, right? But she had the envelope or the jars and the envelopes and all that kind of stuff. So, and that works for some people because it's like they need to track, what they spend on groceries and then what they spend on utilities and what they spend on. Actually, it's more the not the fixed expenses, it's the variable expenses. But that way, it's all groceries and budgeting and entertainment, and that works for some people. But then there's the eyeballing, and I actually don't disagree with that. I think it's a case by case scenario. It's like in terms of what works for you. That at the end of the day, you need to have this much there, and what's the process that works. And sometimes it's trial and error, and sometimes you get caught behind the eight ball, and it's like what, just okay, then we got to step it up and get here, right? Awesome. So how do you do it? What works for you, Nolan?
Well, for me, budgeting is pretty important actually because I don't get paid regularly working for my uncle.
Yep.
I get paid regularly in the summer when I'm coaching tennis, but during the other months of the year and other seasons, it's whenever he gets the bill payments from the players is when he will have the money for me.
Right.
And so it's not always, I don't get paid every 2 weeks. So
Right.
I'll get larger sums of money at once, but then I have to be sure not to blow all of that because it needs to last me maybe a month, maybe a month and a half, depending
Right.
on how his billing goes.
Okay. And how do you find that?
So-
Like, so it works. So do you pay attention? Like, do you pay attention to that, like, do you give yourself like an allowance, for lack of a better word, that you'll say have, $75 for this week, or do you just kind of eyeball it as well? Or not spend?
Yeah, I'll eyeball it. I'll put money in the bank, and I'll think. I like to use cash, so, which I probably need to start using a credit card, like we talked about. But
Right.
I would keep cash out, and that'd be my spending money, and the rest I'd put in my savings.
But I actually think that's awesome. And the one thing that I know you and I had talked about was the thing you noticed the difference of when you used to take out cash and spend it compared to when you started just using your debit and doing taps. And
Yeah.
what did you find? What did you find for that?
I was spending a whole lot more when I use tap because I can't see the money leaving, so I just keep tapping.
Right. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, I have no money. And I just spent $75 on iced coffee
Yeah.
this week now. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeesh, it's like, it's when you've got it physically in your hand, that, okay, this has got to last me until Friday. Like, and this is it. So I actually like that idea. So it's a catch-22, right? So it's like, how do you build credit, but also still work with cash? So it's almost like, I think there's some credit card companies now too. Don't quote me, I could be wrong, but you can actually put a spending limit on per week or per category, right? In terms of how much you want to spend. And I think when it gets there, it kind of alerts you. So that's also a good way to look into budgeting as well, which I think will be good for you, Nolan, come next year that we were talking about is moving out. It's like, what do you do? Because you've never, especially when you've never paid bills, you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. And it's like, how do we go about that, right? So I think that's the big thing with whether it's you finish that when you're finished school and you decide to move out, or it's that you've moved out during like for student residence, is like how does it work? And whether it's going to be the eyeball or whether it's going to be the cash scenario. I think you're going to have to figure out what works for you, but probably more of a disciplined is probably what you're going to find will work for you. So I would say is almost definitely stick to your cash scenario. I think that's awesome because then you know what you need for groceries, and then you can actually meal plan. Meal planning, I think, is the biggest thing, is what it comes to, because you're on a budget. So let's say you give yourself $120 for 2 weeks of groceries. And so then maybe 1 week you're going to spend $80 because then you're going to buy like a larger quantity to make more things. And then the following week it's just going to be you're just going to do the top ups to actually to get you through for the next week. So that way you've got the two to work with. Like, but you've got it like a set amount within the 120. So it doesn't have to be $60 this week and $60 that week. It's a matter of just tweaking it. I could probably see spending a little bit more on one to do the bulk and then a little bit less on the following week. Is that something that you're thinking of doing, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm for sure thinking. I have a huge appetite, so
Right.
groceries has been something I've actually been thinking about quite a bit on how I'm gonna afford it, and
Yeah.
still getting all the luxury of not eating noodles every day.
Right. Yeah. Got the ramen. I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so uh, whether that's going grocery shopping maybe with my parents for the first little bit and learning what I should be picking up also because
Right.
I've never done that before. So
Yeah. And the perfect time is to do it while you're at home. Right. So then that way you can kind of get the idea as well. It's almost, you should almost put yourself on a bit of a budget just like before you actually do the move out. Do like a test run. So that way you can really see. And the nice part is when you go into the grocery store and you've only got, say, the $60 or the $80 on you, don't bring your debit card or don't bring your credit card. So it's like that's more the test and more the lesson that you can't go over the balance and over the limit that you've set for yourself, that you really have to stay within that guideline. And one of the big things, as much as we hate standing in those people in line, is the price shoppers or the price matchers. Because that is actually where you save most of your money, to be honest with you. Is I think you can get the apps too, right? I think it's called Flip. And especially when you are more on a strict budget, that is probably the one that you'll want to do, is actually um, put yourself on price matching, because that'll make a big difference for you on a monthly basis, especially being on a student income. Mm-hmm. So the other thing we always say is that in terms of when it gets to budgeting, whether you do it now or you do it a little bit later, is having 2 bank accounts. So maybe even 3. So with the 2 bank accounts, you've got one as your fixed expenses. So that would be like your rent, or your mortgage, and that's going to be your utilities. That would be your cell phone, because we all have that as a standard bill. And then it's also going to be, what else we have? We have rent, we have utilities, if you have insurance for a car, and then if you've got a car payment. So what you would do is you would figure out what that costs you each month, and actually so let's say at the, let's get my calculator. Let's work with that. So let's say rent is, say, $800 a month. Sounds cheap, but let's work with that. So if we got that, and then you're going to pay, say, $100 for hydro, because you're splitting it with a buddy. And then you're going to do a car loan. What do you guys think a car loan? Like, how much do you think would be a decent payment for a car? You guys looked into that?
200 to 300 bi-weekally.
Okay, so let's go 300 biweekly. So if we times that by 26 and divide it by 12, that works out to be about $650 a month, right? So let's work with that. So $650 for a car. We've got $100 for utilities, and we've got $850 for rent. And then how much would car insurance be? What do you think?
Monthly,
Yeah,
somewhere probably around 300, because some people are probably lower, some people are probably a bit above.
I was going to say the same. I was going to say about 250 to 300. That sound right? Okay, so let's work with that. Okay, so now, so for the car at 650 plus 300, so we're at 950. We've got rent for 850, and we've got utilities at 100. And then what would be cell phone? About 80 bucks, give or take. Yeah,
I
let's
actually
work
don't
with.
know.
I know. I think we're all on the family plan. I totally hear you. I hear you. Okay, so right. Okay, so if we use the 80 for the phone, now we're looking at, just for basics, we're at $1,980. So what we're going to do is we're going to times that by 12, so we have an annual amount, and then we're going to divide it by 26. Because if you get paid biweekly, like on a regular schedule, every pay, sorry, it would cost you $913.85. So let's say, based on pay, so let's say you get paid 1,600 bucks every 2 weeks as your take home. So what you would do is in your house account, as I would call it, like your fixed expenses, then you would transfer over like the $914, keep it in there. And the money that you have left, now that's your extra money. So that's what's going to cover for gas. That's your entertainment, that's your groceries, and that's just, that's your living. But you do want to take from some of that is actually put money into a savings, so that way you're building that nest egg, so that way you've got the money in the event something happens to the car. Because if you don't, so let's say you got to take it to the shop and it's going to cost you 500 bucks. And if you don't have that 500 bucks sitting there, what are we going to do? We're going to pull out the credit card, right? So now we've got an extra expense that we've got to add on to that. So it's always one of those things that you ever hear, it's like always pay yourself first. And I think they always say pay about 10% of your pay should go into your savings. At least that way you've always got that nest egg. So if something does come up, there's no hidden expenses and there's no now stress of now you've got to put it on credit and now you've got an additional payment to worry about. Because when money stress is a hard stress to have. So it's like if you can get ahead of that and not have to worry about it, it's a huge thing that's going to help you guys like down the road in terms of like once you finish school and get into your career, you get into the bigger bills of the mortgage and such and those expenses. So it's like if you can get ahead of it and get some good habits and routines, that's a good thing to do. So I love that we're having this conversation today. So that's awesome. Alrighty. So does that make sense in terms of like for budgeting and such?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, so let me see. I'm going to pull up the other stuff that we were chatting about. Bank accounts. Okay, we talked about credit cards and we talked about car loans. So the one thing, so it was interesting, Riley, that we said a car payment between like 250, 300, right? So we know we're about $650 a month on a car. Most car loans, depending on which car you get, you're going to get them for to pay it off, say in a period of about 5 to 7 years. So depending on how much you borrow. So, and a lot of them will come down to, so let's say at $650 a month, you times that by 12 and say they, now because it's a brand new one, you've got 7 years to pay it off. So that vehicle was about $54,000. So it's probably a nice truck. Or is that just immediate? Is that just a good truck? Or is that a nice truck at $54,000?
I would take the $54,000 truck.
You take it? All right. Okay, good. Okay, so now we got this beautiful truck. So as we know, unfortunately, vehicles, they're a depreciating asset. So as soon as you drive them off the lot, they drop in value, right? But now we've got 7 years worth of payments. So what we do today at say 22 kind of thing, and then what you want to do at 29, because that's going to how long it's going to take to pay it off, it's different goals and it's different times there. So what you do at the age of 22 in terms of what you borrow will have an impact on you at 29, say. So, and what that is say you want to buy a house. And so for every $500 a month that you have on a car payment or any sort of debt, it actually decreases your purchase price of a house by about 100,000, which can make a big difference, right? So if you were looking at buying a house for around 500,000, which today that's $500,000, but that's kind of the average price. So what that's doing is that car payment of that 650 is actually dropping you down to about a purchase price of about 380. So that's actually changing where you're going to live too. So, because you're not going to get a house here around here anymore for about 380,000, right? So that's one of the things that you want to be aware of what we decide to do today, what the impact is going to be in the next little, like in the later years. So whether that means you pay it off or whether that means we just kind of tweak the mortgage process. But if you've got a good savings plan in place, you're going to have a nice down payment as well. So that's going to help. So that'll help you too. Sound good? So, and
Sounds
now,
good.
okay, so now let's say both of you have car payments and you both have a car payment of around $650 a month. So now that's $1,300 a month kind of thing. And individually that's okay, but collectively that's a big payment. So that's going to actually drop your purchase price of a house by about 250,000. So instead of now qualifying for one of 500, it's going to bring it down to closer to about 250. And then, which might just be a condo apartment. So it's one of these things that I know we all love cars and it's the things that we have to do, but it does have an impact down the road. And it's all about knowledge, and I'm all about knowledge is power. So the more you know, the easier it'll be. And the other thing we were chatting about today, Maya and I have had quite a conversation ever since we started talking about this, is what you qualify for. So in terms of incomes, so let's say when you start your career, what would be like a good starting salary? Like, what do you guys think is a good income to start with, like getting out of school?
I guess it all depends on kind of
Like
what you went
on the field too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but you could say out of school, if you took every job, you could probably say anywhere from like 60 to 80,000, somewhere in there. Probably a
Yeah.
good estimate.
That's what I was kind of thinking too. So probably, like, I was even thinking, yeah, around 70, 75. So I think we're right in the right ballpark. So if we actually, so here's a good equation for you. And I know you're not looking to buy a house right out of finishing school either, but just knowing based on today's mortgage rules and such, and where I'm trying to go with this is all about the budgeting, and it's all about the different spending that we do. So if we are having an income of say 70,000, general rule of thumb is that on today you would qualify to purchase a house based at 4.7 times your income. So based on 70,000, you'd qualify to purchase a house today for about 330, based on 70,000. Now and then that's without a car payment. So then if we add a car payment in there of about say 650 a month, that's now going to drop your purchase price down to probably about 200,000, based on a car payment. So it's one of those things. So it's an awareness thing as we get a little bit further in, kind of thing, getting out of school and getting into careers. I want to get you guys prepared that you understand of making good payments on credit, but the credit that you do decide to get, and it's always our cars. We always get a car. I get it. I've done it. We've all done it. I've seen it. But how is it going to impact you going further down, like within your 20s into your 30s? But it also depends if that's what you want. If you want to buy a house, or if you just want to, travel. I get that too. I like that too. So, so it's all about figuring out what's gonna be best for you, and how that's gonna look. And then we have OSAP, which we didn't even get in there. So that is something that I know, right? So we've got finishing school, we could have OSAP debt, so then we got to pay that back. And how does that look? And what does that look like? And I know OSAP again is different for everybody in terms of what they qualify for and in terms of what you get. And are they still doing some of the grants, or is it all just? I don't even know. I haven't looked into it for a little bit. Do we know?
I don't think they do grants. I don't think they've done that since I was maybe in first year.
Okay, so they did get rid of it. I thought they had, but I wasn't too sure. Okay, so at the end, so based on with the OSAP is that once you do finish school, they actually give you a grace period. I believe, is it still 6 months? I think is that once you are finished school and until you start working, they actually have no payments, or you don't have to make any payments on the OSAP. But then it does convert, and then it goes to a regular payment, I believe. Is that correct? Have we heard anything?
I think that's correct.
Yeah. Do they talk about this in school? Do they educate you on that as you get, or
Uh,
as you're applying in, or no?
no, I don't. Well,
No?
maybe they do, and I didn't pay attention, but I don't think they did when
None
I
of
was
those?
going in.
Nolan, did you see anything?
No, nobody talked about it at all.
No, I didn't think so, because I don't think, and Maya, you haven't come across that either, except for when we did the university fair, right? Yeah, and it was going and talking, it was talking to somebody like at a booth, and other than that, that was it. But what they don't tell you is that the money that you borrow, kind of thing, they will term it out into a loan that you pay back, and it's a 10-year amortization. So they actually give you the loan to pay back, and it'll take you 10 years to pay it off. Mind you, with a loan, it's fully open, so you can pay it back a little bit quicker too. And that's on the OSAP. But then there's the likes of the clients that where you can actually get the student line of credits through the banks. So I've just worked with a client recently, and his student line of credit limit was 60,000, and that's what he stole out. And he's been out of school for about 4 years, and he has a $60,000 debt on his student line of credit. And now he's looking to buy a house because now he's been working for a couple of years. So that 60,000, we actually, because it's a student line, we actually have to put 1% as a repayment on a credit application, which is a $600 $600 a month payment, which he does pay, which has to pay in terms of paying it off. But it's hard now getting out, but it's all about the discipline and the structure in terms of in building it into your budget. That's part of your fixed expenses, right? So that's one of the things to be aware of too when we get out of school is the post-secondary debt. So it's almost like there's a lot of info for, like, in terms of where do you begin? It's like, okay, so I need to get a credit card, but I should really pay cash, but I need to use my credit card to get a credit score, kind of thing, and not carry a balance so that I now have to pay it all back or that I screw up my credit. It almost seems like a lot of pressure. Does it feel like that way or not really once you're in it?
I, at least in my experience, I feel like once you're in it, it's not that bad. Uh,
No, which is true, right? Yeah, because it's the fear of the unknown, and you don't know what you don't know, and until you do it, then it's like, oh, it's not so bad.
Agreed.
Okay, but you're smart because you only, like you said, you don't go above your means. Like you stay within your means, because you know you've got the money to pay it, so you're basically covering it all the time anyhow. So which is awesome. Good. And how do you feel about using credit, Nolan?
It's a little scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's one of the things you just got to rip off the Band-Aid and try it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can get points. Does the student credit card come with points?
My credit card is not a points. It's just cash back.
It's a cashback one? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and that's good too. So the more you use it, like Riley was saying, do you have a points credit card, Riley?
I have one that's like a Canadian Tire points one, Canadian Tire money, and then one that's just a cash back. But that one will be expiring soon because that's my student card. So I'll be
Okay.
looking into, I guess, transitioning into an adult or like non-student big boy card that
That's awesome.
I'll have to check out the rewards of what we got.
Right? Absolutely. Absolutely. That's awesome. But that's the good part about that. Like you're saying about the Canadian Tire one. That's awesome because you could go and you shop at Canadian Tire. So that's awesome. So you can build the points. And do they give you the Canadian Tire money? I don't even know if that's still a thing. Or is it just that it's credit against the credit card now? How does that
It's
work?
all like all the Canadian Tire money now is online, more like a point system
Oh,
than
it's like a point
anything.
system? Okay.
And
Yep.
yeah, kind of. It's the same idea, like same amount of Canadian tire dollars per dollar and stuff, but now it's just more like a point system. So it applies to my Canadian Tire account.
Perfect. Kind of thing. So which is good. So then you can collect it and then transfer it over and pay it off. So then you can get like a free tent or you can get something like for free, right? But and some people get sucked into that though. They're like, oh, I'll put everything on the credit card because now I'm going to get something. And that's the appeal. It's like, you're going to get your cash back or you're going to get your points and such. And so people will use the credit cards, not realizing that if they're carrying a balance, that it's actually costing them more in the end because credit card companies generally charge like 19%. So that's where you have to be aware again of if you're going to use it, that you're paying it off. So you're not too bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that way you're ahead of the game. Then it becomes a win-win for you. So which is awesome. Okay, so Nolan, we're going to
Uh,
start getting, yeah.
Sorry, quick question. Maybe
Mhm.
this is kind of a little bit off topic. You see pretty much every major corporation now has their own credit card for the
Yep.
most part. Is there any corporate credit cards or company credit cards that, in your experience, people should avoid?
Ooh, avoid. Nope, I haven't seen that one yet. I haven't seen an avoid one, which is good. But it's again, it's going to be based on interest and how you utilize it. Like if you're carrying a balance, um, then some of them will charge. I remember, I think Sears used to charge, and Home Depot, I think, might still. I think they charge like 29% interest. So it was like the store, like department stores, they would 29%. Like that's a high. That's high, and that's compounding
Oh,
monthly. So you're paying interest on interest. So you do want to look for whether it's if you're not carrying a balance, a points reward system is awesome because you're going to get because then you're getting something back. But if you are going to carry a balance, you always want to get it on the lower interest rate ones. And some of them will come. I think the lowest I've seen on a regular card is like 11.99. That's kind of like the standard, but you'll pay an annual fee to get that. That's one of those. But the one that if it's not a student visa and you want or a student credit card to start out on would be Capital One. Capital One is the one that actually helps people get established in credit. So that's actually the ones that'll help people if they've got some bruised credit or they've had some hiccups in the past and we need to get some good credit started again, then we'll go to Capital One. But no, I haven't come across any to avoid yet. So that's good though. And like actually, I just switched over to a new insurance company, and and the guy said to me, he's like, you can put your insurance through your credit card so you can get your points. And again, it's the same scenario. It's like I know I got to pay it every month anyhow. So whether it came from my bank account or whether it actually came from the credit card, as long as I'm not carrying a balance, then I'm coming out ahead. And that's what I did for that because that's a reoccurring payment that just goes on my card, and then I just pay it off every month anyhow. So it became a win-win for me too. So you're seeing a lot more of that coming out now as well. So if you've got the good credit, that's something to consider down the road as well for you guys. But again, good credit is all about making the minimum payment if you're carrying a balance or paying it off in full and not living beyond your means. And that's hard because sometimes we're in that society of want, right? Like we all want stuff, but it's sometimes you don't realize that that want that you go and you put it on the credit card and then all of a sudden the bill comes in and you're like, oh god. We had a conversation earlier today, like I was talking about someone that she knew who was saying she didn't get a lot of hours on a paycheck. So I think, like, let's say her paycheck was $100 because she didn't work that many hours, but her credit card bill was 90. So there went her paycheck. So it's kind of like, ouch. So whether that was she was paying it off in full or whether that meant that was the minimum payment. So potentially that could be that she had a balance of about 3,000 on a credit card. So then she actually owed $90 on that. So, and that's where you can get into those cycles, is that if all your pay is now going to the credit card, so now you've paid it, but now you're going to use it again. And so that becomes the cycle, and that's the hard part to get out of if you're not disciplined. That makes sense?
that
No,
makes sense.
perfect. And we just got a statement there. She was actually saying, I budget every month and I still overspend sometimes because it's hard. And I think it is because we go to Costco or we go to the mall or we go to Canadian Tire or we go to the fishing store. You know what I mean? You see those things that you want and it's like, oh, I can get it. And we get a high. Like it's an emotional high that we get from spending and it makes you feel good. Right. So it's like, yeah, I deserve it. I did good. Or I passed this test or I didn't spend any money last week or whatever. You know what I mean? So we will spend that money. So this way, if it's in the budget, it's just that a little bit easier, or you just got to be more aware the next month or the next pay where you just got to cut back a little bit and you don't get a whole lot extra that pay either. Sound right? Where do you find your biggest challenge right now? Like based on the stage of life that you're in?
Maybe just not making a financial mistake that will, like we've talked about, impact a mortgage. Not that I'm going to be buying a house next year, but if I buy one in
Yeah.
4 or 5, 6 years, or I'm looking
Right.
to to get a mortgage in 4, 5, 6, then my fear is like, I guess, making a poor decision now that will still affect me then.
And it does, and I've seen it happen. So, but I think being aware and having these conversations today is actually that one step. It's the step in the right direction. So when you become aware, you generally don't make the mistakes, right? Because and if you do, you redirect. But everyone's got a path, and it's like whether we go off the path and we come back, it's a matter of figuring it out. But if it's a short-term hiccup kind of thing, it's a small hiccup, and then everything just gets repaired over time. But yeah, I totally hear you. So I think it's becoming aware of the money and how we spend it and how we save it and how we look at it. Because really, every dollar that you earn, it has a purpose, and that's what it comes down to as well, right? So, and that would be paying for education, paying for a car, paying for rent, groceries. It's like all that living expenses. It's like you have to be aware, because when you're not aware, that's when the mistakes happen. Because if you bury your head in the sand, it's hard, and money conversations are hard to have. Kind of because a lot of people, you don't want, like, people can feel shame when it comes to money, and people can feel embarrassment, and people become vulnerable when they talk about money because it's a self-value thing. So these are tough conversations to have, but they're ones that have to happen because it just makes it easier as you get older, and then it makes you more confident as well. And that's what I'm always here for in terms of helping you guys, but it's and all my clients as well, right? It's just that there's no shame and there's no mistakes. It's like everyone has a story, and it's a matter of just picking up on what you do with it. But if you can get a firm foundation to begin with, which I find a lot of people don't have, kind of thing, that's where some of the issues can come in, right? Because they don't know how to talk about money, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what to ask. So it's a matter of, okay, let's just keep talking and let's see what we can do. All right. So what else? What else could we chat about? Okay, we talked about student loans. We talked about OSAP, and then living away from home, which we talked about a little bit as well, and cell phones. So here's the biggest thing you need to know about cell phones. So you guys don't pay the cell phones right now, but what you do need to know, when you do, they actually affect your credit. Kind of thing. So if you ever have a dispute with a cell phone company, it's like you've canceled with Rogers and now you're going to Bell. Like we all hate a provider at some point, right? That's just the way it is with cell phones. But if you do, the worst thing you can do is actually not pay that bill, because they will put a collection charge on your credit bureau, and then eventually you will have to pay it, but it's also lowered your credit score, and it'll hurt you trying to get something. Trying to get a new credit card, or even get a car loan to get any sort of new credit. So the one thing you want to do is actually always make sure you pay your cell phone bills, because they will have an impact. They just started reporting to the credit bureau a couple years ago. And they are the biggest problem on our end, because that's where we actually see, because sometimes it's the parents, it's like, well, it wasn't my card, it was, say it was Maya's card, and then she didn't pay it, but now I'm responsible for it, but I'm not paying it because she didn't pay it, and it becomes a domino effect and such. So that will actually have an impact on your credit. So always pay your cell phone bill. And that's at the end of the day, it's an obligation that you have. And how lenders will look at it is, if you don't make a $10 a month payment, who says you're going to make $1,000 a month payment? So at the end of the day, it's the obligation. It's not the amount. It's never the amount. It's a matter of making the payment, and you'll just be better for it in the end. It'll make your life easier. Trust me. Trust me. Okay, I think I talked a lot. Okay, surprise. All right. So is there anything that I need to cover with you guys that I didn't cover? Nope.
I'm good.
You're good? Nolan, you're good? Maya, good?
Yeah.
Kylie, my poor thing. You barely said anything. You sat there. Did you learn something though?
Yeah. I mean, like, I don't make money, so, like, I don't have money, so I don't know anything. So, like, I'm just kind of listening.
Right. But did this help you? Because I know we're starting to apply for jobs for you this year. So did this help give you some idea of what you can expect when it comes to money?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's one of those things. It's like, you need to still treat yourself. You still need to be able to spend your money, but you still need to be able to save, right? And it's a matter of figuring all that out. So What I've been doing as well is I was talking to another student last year, also same scenario as you, Nolan, going to be doing, not doing residence, so living out on his own. And we were chatting about his budget as well. So it's a matter of figuring out what money that you have to work with. Like we were talking about different OSAPs and different work and such. And once you have all that, if you need some help, I will totally help guide you on that too. Kind of, I know your parents are awesome for that too, but it's like if you want to chat, I'm always here as well. So, and if you have any friends that have any questions in terms of they don't know what to do, that's I'm always a phone call or text away as well. Then I'm totally here to help. And then the same thing with you guys, Riley. Like as you guys finish school and start getting into the planning mode, and it's like maybe you don't want to buy the house now, but you want to. What do I need to do to get into buying a house in the next 2 to 3 years? And then it's about putting the plan in place so no hiccups show up, right? And then you don't all of a sudden go, oh, I'm gonna go buy a house, and then it's like, oh, I should have, but now I got to do this, or this, right? So it's a matter of putting it all in place.
Yeah,
Sound
for
good?
sure.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Well, thanks for being my captive audience. You guys were awesome. Thank you for letting me talk to you like forever. That was like super fun. I've been wanting to do this for a very long time and actually just get the basics out. I probably dove in a little bit more than I was planning on some things, but I think it's as we go forward, we'll kind of target some different age groups, and then we'll get a little bit more in depth as to what we can expect and go from there.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for showing up, guys. Thank you. Enjoy your night, and I will
Thanks.
I will chat with you guys later.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.